Spring is my favorite season of the year, but that period where summer melts into fall and the plants and the trees are still really lush and green, but there's a slight chill in the air is definitely a close second. In celebration of another month's end and this special time of the year, I come to you with my August favorites. Here are all the things that kept me company throughout the month of August. First, I present you with Edith Wharton's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, The Age of Innocence. This work of classic literature set in old New York is about the humanity that is sacrificed when you worship the status quo. It's also about the strict social codes of wealthy enclaves, feelings that you thought were set in stone but are actually more fragile than you think, and the lives of complicated women. Despite telling very interesting stories about women, it's all told through the point of view of a prototypical society man named Newland Archer. His world folds in on itself when he's about to marry who he thought was the perfect woman, but he becomes possessed by her newly arrived cousin, who is a foreign countess who has just fled from an abusive husband. He's affronted by her beauty and her charm and her strange way of being, but he's also obsessed. He suddenly starts to struggle with the reality of a life not lived, and the novel is an intimate portrait of his psyche as well as the evolving world that he lives in. I came to reading this popular novel in a pretty roundabout way. Suddenly out of nowhere, I feel like I found myself in a Gilded Age craze. A bunch of my friends were talking about it. They were telling me how it's always been one of their favorite time periods in history. So of course I had to go watch The Gilded Age on HBO Max and The Buccaneers on Apple TV. I was of course dazzled by the dresses and the sets, but the superficial relationships and storylines propelled me towards the source material, and that's how I found myself with Edith Wharton. When I was younger, my historical hyperfixations revolved around colonial America and the Roman Empire, so whenever the Gilded Age was mentioned, I didn't really care. But I have to thank these TV shows for opening my eyes, because the Gilded Age is a fascinating time period. There's the superficial splendor, the excessive consumption and leisure, the severe wealth inequality with the industrialization and the oligarch-like figures playing with the fate of the country. On top of that, there's this upper class holding on to these very strict social codes that really can't withstand the pressures of a changing country. I can't believe I ever looked away from this time period that is so clearly the foundation of so much of our country's identity. In fact, it's probably the blueprint for so many of our tech oligarchs of today. This book is an August favorite, even though I didn't finish reading it until September. Inspired by the late summer heat and the indulgence in late summer distractions, I took to savoring this book throughout the month of August. Some would say I had a slower reading month, having only finished 2 books. However, I'm trying to release myself from the pressures of reading for the sake of abundance alone. On that note, this may have been my first Edith Wharton novel, but it's certainly not my last. Before I get into my next favorite, hi, I'm Simone. I'm a writer and literary influencer who loves litfic and classic literature. I graduated with my master's from the University of Chicago in June with a focus in creative writing and English literature. I love art, perfume, history, painting my own nails, and sentimental knickknacks. My second August favorite is my new Traveler's Company journal in the color camel. I'm sure like many of you, I've been inundated with journaling ecosystem propaganda like Louise Carmen's, Paper Republic, notebook jewelry. And yes, I was half under its spell, and sometimes I would fluctuate being like, yeah, that's totally worth it, to thinking that a notebook for over 150 euros is a scam. I toyed with the idea of making a leather journal myself, but while I was in New York on a work trip with Penguin Random House the other week, I popped into Kinokuniya bookstore and gave in to temptation. These Traveler Company notebooks from Japan are cheaper than the 2 brands I mentioned earlier, and the leather journal itself is about $55. But when you add in all the accoutrements, like the notebook inserts, the extra bands, the flaps, mine came out to be around $80. That's totally fine if you think that's an unjustifiable price for a notebook, but I am telling you, I do feel like a real writer when I write in it. Here's a little tour of my notebook. So I added a pearl charm that I already had to the band. When you open it, I have a notebook dedicated for my daily journaling. And then I have a flap for little photos and mementos. Then I have a lined journal for notes on the novel that I'm writing. In the back, I have another pocket with some sticky tabs. For those of you considering these notebooks, I want you to know that the outside is more of a soft suede. I thought it would be a shiny leather going in. I didn't know that. I also love the smoothness of the paper, but I have to get used to writing on a narrower plane. I've been journaling in papier notebooks for ages, and I love these notebooks, but I just thought it'd be fun, a change of pace. These notebooks are supposed to last you forever since you can keep adding new notebooks and taking out the old ones, so hopefully here's to forever. August favorite number 3 is a painter, an experience, and a recommendation all in one. So I've been visiting the Art Institute Museum in Chicago for as long as I can remember, but this August I got to experience the museum in a brand new way. My friend Reagan is working there this summer, and on Tuesdays while the museum is closed, employees are allowed to bring guests in and give them a private tour. We met in grad school where she's studying art history, and I feel so honored that she decided to take me. After interning at the Field Museum of Chicago in high school and reading books like All the Beauty in the World by Patrick Bringley, a memoir about his experience as a security guard at the Met for 10 years, I've become obsessed with how museums work, especially on the days closed to the public. While I was there on this recent trip, I got to see teams having meetings in galleries, I got to see glass being installed, exhibition repairs, all the incredible hidden labor that goes into running a museum. Reagan specializes in art provenance work and collection histories, so I tasked her with showing me all of her favorite paintings. She took me to Gertrude Abercrombie's painting titled Self-Portrait of My Sister, and this is something I'm actually familiar with. My fiance really likes this painting. He always thought it was funny that Gertrude didn't really have a sister, and now, through Reagan's eyes, this painting is one of my August favorites. She taught me that Gertrude was actually close to slipping into obscurity as an artist, but recently there's been a resurgence in attention towards her, and to be honest, I get why. I also want to include this podcast that Reagan recommended me called the Great Women Artists Podcast, and they have an episode on Gertrude Abercrombie that is so interesting, I've already listened to it twice. Gertrude went to school studying languages at UIUC, and as an artist, she cut her teeth painting glove advertisements at department stores. In her own work, she often painted herself, or versions of herself, as well as landscapes of cats and other witchy objects that created these magical, haunting visions. She famously said, "Surrealism is meant for me, because I am a pretty realistic person, but don't like all I see. So I dream that it is changed. Then I change it the way I want it. It is almost always pretty real. Only mystery and fantasy have been added. All foolishness has been taken out. It becomes my own dream." Nicknamed Queen of Bohemia or Queen of Chicago, she was friends with a lot of iconic jazz artists, and her house functioned as a gathering place for all of these people. I feel the need to mention to you that when she was older, she took to wearing a pointed black hat that her neighbors would look at and call her a witch. And maybe I need to take notes from Gertrude, because maybe that's something I need to be incorporating into my life. Anyway, she grew up and lived not too far off from where I do, so I recently took a trip to go see the house that inspired so much of her work. I am head over heels obsessed with Audrey Hobart's debut album, Who's the Clown, and I've probably already listened to it upwards of 100 times. There hasn't been a brand new artist that has just captivated me the way that she has, and I love that her music has this 2000s rom-com feel that is colorful and comforting, but it also has this very specific feel of like the opening of a Disney Channel movie where the protagonist is riding a skateboard down the hallway, and I just love it. Her melodies are complete earworms, and she has this knack for storytelling that makes you want to listen to the entire album straight through again and again. She embraces cringe in a really singular way, and her songs encapsulate the very honest vulnerabilities of a girl who just wants to be liked and wants to be attractive. She writes music for the neurotic, weird, regular girl, and she makes great pop music. I want my pop music to be thoughtful, fun, propulsive, something you can scream, maybe cry while dancing alone in your room. The 3 main singles off this album are pop perfection, but I'm also big fans of Thirst Trap, Chateau, and Silver Jubilee. If you were to ask me my 3 favorite albums of the summer, I would tell you Lord's Virgin, Addison by Addison Rae, and then Audrey Hobart's debut album, Who's the Clown. My last favorite is this little stuffed animal duck with crochet earmuffs. I love her. When I was in New York, I went to K-Town with my little sister to H Mart to go get raw marinated crabs. And in the back, there's a little shop with guys like this. And now I took her home with me and she lives on my tote bag. If you've made it this far, welcome to my first official YouTube video. This is the world of balloon breath, and if you stick around, I promise to tell you the meaning behind the handle that I've had since high school. If you're still curious about the person that's talking to you through the screen, here are some rapid fire fun facts. I am the middle child of 2 sisters. I'm Malaysian Chinese American, and my parents were both born in Kuala Lumpur. I'm working on writing my debut novel. I also work as a content creator for Penguin Random House, and you can find me on their Instagram and their TikTok. My favorite color is blue. I met my fiance my freshman year of college when he lived on the opposite floor of the dorm. And I'll end on a fragrance. My favorite perfume is Romanesque from the brand Summer Hours. On that note, see you next time.